Hi. Yesterday I talked about one open source Loveable alternative which you can use to self-host and also tweak the prompt for your own use case. In that video, I explained the implementation and what GitHub repository was, but I didn't explain what was the architecture, where to edit to make your custom prompts, where to edit to make your own custom starter template. So today I'm going to explain the architecture of Lovable alternatives, and this is how not only Lovable alternative work, this is how actually Lovable, Bolt.new, Replit works in the top level. So let's get into the video. So you can see I've prepared one demo for you, a top level overview on how Loveable, Bolt.new and Replit works. So what happens is that you give prompt and they provide you a website, right? So you write build me a timer, build me an alarm, build me a landing page. Whatever you write, they provide you a website. You and internally they use code and you can see that code is generated by AI. So I'm talking about this system. I'm not talking about WordPress sites or any other application which used to exist before 2022. I'm talking about the no code or the AI revolution which just started a year back or two. So I'm talking about those no code tools, which actually is no code for you, but for internal use case, they are providing you code which is React or Next.js code. So I'm talking about that system. So how does it work? So obviously I prepared one architecture for you. So what happens is that I'm assuming that they are using Next.js app. They can be using any application. This doesn't matter because this is a user level item. So here there are two API routes which actually derives, and that is for the code generation and another is for the sandbox. So you can see this is the Next.js application where user write prompt, and then when user writes prompt, the first step it goes to AI provider. AI providers generates code and send back to this application. Then this application sends that code back to the sandbox, and sandbox return a sandbox URL. So sandbox URL is nothing but a small virtual machine. Like, consider that this is a small mini computer which is active for 30 minutes. Okay, so that is how it is done. So a 30 minutes small computer is given to you, allotted to you by the sandbox company. That can be CodeSandbox or that can be E2B, and they temporarily deploy your code and sends you a URL to preview that website. So this is how actually the whole architecture looks. This is nothing complex, but this is how actually it works. Now, there's a definition that Loveable use React. So Loveable for code view and code like URL, you don't need actually Sandbox. But if you are using database, if you are using any API provider, at that time you need Sandbox. So we have understood the architecture. Now there is one another architecture which is people are experimenting and people are trying. So they are just removing this AI provider. They are just doing the Next.js and Sandbox. So what do I mean by Next.js and Sandbox? So for example, this is your, for example, maybe I build this one. This is your Next.js app, and this is your Sandbox. So in Sandbox only, inside this sandbox only, they are using Cloud Code to code. So they just send the prompt to this sandbox in which Cloud Code and your application is there, and they're sending it to Cloud Code, and you are getting one URL at something 3000 port maybe, and Cloud Code is running internally, so it is not exposed. So this is safe, and you just send your prompt directly here from Next.js application. So this is people are experimenting, and this is something I will also experiment in the future, like how to create so that we just skip this particular point of view. Like I want to skip this item because now right now the problem is that whenever you're writing prompt, this goes to AI provider, then AI provider sends back the code, then you send back to Sandbox. There is a lot of friction. You have to manage the code, you have to manage the file structure, you have to do everything on your own, and at the same time there is a problem. For example, if error happens, it doesn't know the context, you have to send back the context. But if Cloud Code is running, if npm run, if Cloud Code can read the logs, then Cloud Code will always do a safe build and safe npm run def. So this will be more type safe and this will be more error free. So this is again for future implementation. So if you are building something like this one, you can obviously use this architecture, the new one and the old one, or a mix of both. So now let's understand what is the chat. So for example, for the prompt you write every prompt here, right? So this goes to the AI prompt, like this AI provider, and it returns back the code, and that code when it just gets written, so you can see it is reading, read tool is there, then it is editing. So editing, like it is returning back the code, and that is given here. So maybe this one, maybe, yeah. So this is a sandbox URL. So if you open this one, you can say this .lovable.app. This is actually a sandbox. So it gets refreshed every 30 minutes or maybe 1 hour. It depends on how Lovable creates the sandbox, and that's why you must experience some lags where the preview is not working because of that sandbox issue. Now let's talk about the E2B which we experimented yesterday. So this was the code. Now you can easily understand the code. You can see for the app API endpoint, we are providing all the AI model system, which is returning back our code. Then we send that code to our sandbox, and how we are sandbox, we are using E2B SDK, and in that inside we are using sandbox templates, and we are using secure code execution. And again, this is just to store the URL and the storage, and this is not important, but these two items are important. Now let's see the code to understand. So I've prepared this one. So you can see in the, if I just zoom in for you guys, so you can see there are two API routes, that is chat and that is the sandbox. Chat you already know how to set up and all, because you have already made chatbot and all. If you've not seen my videos, you can watch those videos to understand how chat API endpoint works. Now let's understand the sandbox API endpoint. So you can see they are using 10 minutes of sandbox and max duration is 60 minutes. And here, let me just close this one because you have understand that we are using sandbox. You can see, first of all, we create a sandbox. That is the first thing we do. And to create that, we need template. And for template, we are using template and then the item. So what exactly is template? So let's understand the template. Let me again open this one. So for every, right now, Loveable use React, right? But yesterday example, I have shown you that you can create a Next.js, you can create a Vue, Gradio and Streamlit, any application, and we use Next.js. So how Next.js works? So you can see this is the Next.js code. This actually gets compiled. So you have to create one script. You have to create one Docker file. So in Docker file, you actually mention how to run this application. So again, you run this script, and this is your working directory. Then you use shatcn, you install push-talk, and also this is you have to create. Then this e2b.toml file is also important, in where you write the template name and how to import the sandbox, and also again with all the configuration which you need for your E2B sandbox, like CPU count, memory, then team ID, and also these are important thing. Then you have this add.tsx, which is actually just the first item, like the first code where the edit will happen. So this is using pages router. You can use app router as well, and in that you have to use page.tsx, right? So this is how it works, and these are the few important things you need to develop before you create the API endpoint. So you have to create the template. So this is how Next.js developer template was created. Now let's get back to route. So we are just calling that Next.js developer template. So whenever we are writing prompt and a new chat is created, and again we install the packages. So if it has additional dependencies from that template, only we get the dependencies and we install those dependencies. Then we copy that code to file system. So since we are inside the sandbox, which is again a small mini computer, so file system will work, and that's why we copy the code which is generated by the AI directly to here. So you can see for each file we just wait, we write the file and we console log, and if there is, and if it, and we execute the code or return URL to the running sandbox. So this is how it actually works. This is how the endpoint works. And again, it all boils down to this E2B sandbox, which they handle all the complexity, so you don't have to worry. And similarly, CodeSandbox also works. So it depends completely on you in which provider you want to use. But since you are using this fragments as a reference, I would suggest to use E2B. But if you are in future planning to do something else, you can use CodeSandbox, because CodeSandbox give you a lot of flexibility which E2B doesn't give. And E2B is again only focused and it is new, but CodeSandbox is old, so you can use any of this according to your choice. So this is how it actually works, and the rest code you already know how to read and write. So obviously the entry point is page.tsx, and here you can see all the items. So if you need to read any of that, how auth is working, how save input is working, how file change is working and all, so you can go and you can read them on according to your own need. But these two endpoints were important, the chat and the E2B. So this was it, guys. So this was what I wanted to tell you, and this is how you create a lovable alternative. So if you're creating one, all the best to you. And if you have any doubt and questions, please let me know through the comments. Until then, take care, and I will see you in the next video with another SaaS implementation or another GitHub repository which will help you to build your next application. Okay, bye.